All right. Hello, hello. It is 11:30 in the morning on Tuesday, September 19th, 2023. How's everybody doing this morning? Hope everybody is doing well. All right. Sounds like the audio levels are coming through loud and clear. So, what I want to do is just have a conversation. There are no screen shares today. There's no links that I'll be sharing because I'm under a time limit. We actually have a realtor coming to talk to us about putting the house in Pittsburgh on the market. So if you know anyone who needs a house in the Pittsburgh area, uh, send them our way. Or if you yourself are interested in moving, send send yourself our way. Reach out to us, and we'll put you in touch with our realtor. And so this is happening tomorrow. She's coming by tomorrow to talk to us. She's actually the person that sold us the house, so we felt it was only fair to go back to her to sell the house to someone else. Not sure how long it's going to take, but I got to tell you, since we have started this new internal dialogue in our lives, life has been this incredible gift. We started this internal dialogue probably on March 13th of 2020 when the national emergency was declared. And we looked at each other. I'm talking about my husband and myself. We looked at each other and we said, looks like it's over. It's finally over. We are finally free to be who we want to be, to say what we want to say without editing ourselves, and not to live in fear because this is it. It's over. Now, I'm sure that the country has been sold off to various corporate and capitalist and um, international parties, whether they are governments or other countries, a long, long time ago. But it seemed to be made more apparent. It seemed to be made obvious on March 13th of 2020 when the national emergency was declared, because that's when the country says we're at war. So we turned around and said, okay, well, we're at war, so we can do whatever the fuck we want, you know? So there was definitely a sense of freedom and a sense of um, being unshackled when the national emergency took place. So we started our 5-year plan back in 2018 when we moved here before the national emergency was declared. Obviously, it was declared 2 years later on March 13th of 2020. So we started our 5-year plan in 2018. And in 2013, 5 years later, we had succeeded. And, even though if any outsider were looking in and saying, if people knew how much money we didn't bring in every month, and they knew what our challenges were and what our physical constraints were, they would say, are you crazy? What are you doing? But we found something that worked for us. We found something that will sustain us for the rest of our lives. This house that we lived in Pittsburgh, it's got amazing bones, tall ceilings. Like it's in really, really great shape, despite the fact that it was built in 1926. So it's almost 100 years old. So it has that really nostalgic feel to it. And it served a purpose for the 5 years that we were here. So the goal is to be permanent in Biloxi, Mississippi, by October 14th, at least for me. JP has to come back, and there's going to be one big last move towards the end of the month, and then we're finally out of here. So we're hoping that by, sometime October or November, the house will sell. So if you know of anyone who is looking for a house that will most likely be under 100K, then send them our way. I'm just being very transparent here. And, this house served us really well. So we are incredibly grateful to it and to the community for helping us find ourselves even when the community wasn't really accepting us. We had eggs thrown at our front door. I had a neighbor try to obstruct me from getting into my own home. It was not a pretty situation, but what it did was it encouraged me to double down on my resolve and focus on what was important, which was that 5-year plan. And I had a very specific, specific criteria for that 5-year plan. It had to be, no more snow. It had to be living in a house for the rest of my life where there were no stairs. Everything had to be one level. It had to be within walking distance to white sandy beaches that I could dip my toes in some salty water if I needed to. It had to be within walking distance to an eating establishment, maybe a coffee shop. So, I, so I got all of it. I got everything that I had, put down as my personal criteria and what I needed. And also a space big enough that, there could be an office for JP to do his design work for his company, and then another space for us to do our creative work, and then even another space for us to create music. And we have it all. And a guest bedroom and a master bedroom and a couple bathrooms and a place where you can actually sit down and eat. Lots of windows. That was one of the criteria. So there's lots of windows there, and it had to be a very unique place with a very unique history. Like, my criteria was pretty high, and it was all met because I would not compromise. So I want to talk to you a little bit about, like, some of the cliches that you've heard your entire life. Like, for instance, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a positive outcome or expecting a different result. What And that result never happens, or that outcome never happens. What is the definition of that? Well, apparently it's insanity. But, I like to be a little bit more gentle and kind with my uh, m- cliches or whatever out there. I don't know if it's so much insanity as it's a is is that our trauma informs us to continue down the same path. Um, so I will tell you I'll give you a fictional account of a situation. There are 24 people, say 24 people, in a room, and they all have their faces covered. They're all wearing masks to conceal their identity. And they're saying whatever they want. And they're usually talking all at the same time about the things that matter to them at one point in life. And a couple of them reinvent their trauma through their words constantly, every day. And then come JP and me. And we are in this group of 24 people. And we look at everybody rattling off, some of the things that are being said are quite beautiful and poetic. And we say, oh, that's nice. But that doesn't really define reality. It feels as though that beauty and that poetic diatribe or whatever is an escape route. And it feels like, and as we look at each and every one of these individuals in this group where their faces are covered, I mean, we know their names and we kind of have, some idea of their background, but their faces are covered. So we don't really truly know them. And we've only known them for a little while by going to this group. So we're watching how each and every individual is using the group and using the space where the group meets every day, sometimes 2, 3 times a day. They're using it as a crutch. They're using it as a means to get out of responsibility, as a way to, you know, pull all of their energy into focusing on the group and being heard rather than actually accomplishing anything of use in their personal lives. So so there were a couple of people in this group of 24 people where their faces are covered, and we don't really know them. We have a general idea about who they are. And they say, things like, um, the neighbor across the street from me was hired, has hired a bunch of people to work on their cars. And the only place that those people can work on the cars is in the driveway. And so there's pounding and, they're dropping their supplies all the time. And I can't even hear myself think in my own home. And so I've called the police. And then the police came and said, there isn't anything we can do. Well, then the second day, the same thing happened. And so I called the police. And then the police came and didn't do anything and said there isn't anything they can do. And then the third day, the same thing happened. And I called the police. You see, the person is repeating the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And that's, not insanity. It sounds like insanity. To me and you, it sounds like insanity. It sounds like this person might be mentally ill. But they're not. They're just being informed by their trauma. And then so we come forward with solutions and we say, all right, well, we spent 2 hours of our personal time laying out all of the information that you need. Here is your problem. Here is your solution. Now, in between your problem and your solution, it's going to be difficult. Certain people that will help you with this problem may not call you back right away. You just have to keep trying. They are the right direction to go. We are informing you of the solution. The solution won't come right away, but it will eventually come if you stick with it. But one thing you can't do is continue the path that you've been repeating over and over again in your life, because clearly that's not the way to go. And so what did this person do to us in this group of 24 people with their faces covered, and we don't know who they are, but we just have a general idea of their background. They put a big X over us and said, don't talk to me. Don't communicate with me. You're mean. And, all we said was, we gave you the solution. Apparently this has been going on for 4 months, which is longer than I can imagine that it should have ever gone on. But now this person is like, I don't want to hear you tell the truth. I don't want your solutions. I want to be informed by my trauma. I don't want to move forward. And so you have to accept that there are people in the world who simply won't. They would much prefer to be in this safe little group of 24 people with their faces covered, and you sort of have a general idea of who they are, but you're not really sure about their background and what's going on with them. But they feel much safer being in that room, sharing their joys, sharing their tragedies and traumas. And there's a feedback loop. And within that feedback loop comes all these dopamine hits. And so they go to that room and they go to that space. Maybe it's, a community center. Maybe it's inside of a church. Maybe it's inside of a high school gymnasium where there's a bunch of chairs, in a circle and everybody's talking, but their faces are covered and you're not exactly sure who they are, but you have a general sense of it. And so they keep coming back to this place, 2, 3, 4, 8 times a day, because every time they come back to that space, they're getting a dopamine hit. It's like doing a bump of cocaine. It's like smoking pot. It's like doing something to ameliorate their pain, as opposed to adjusting their life course, taking information that others have prepared for them and running with it and changing their life for the better. So when you announce to people that they are, using these groups or these situations where everybody's faces are covered and you kind of have a general idea of who they are, but you're not exactly sure. And you're telling them that this is a crutch and that this entire, concept about coming to this place and sharing your whether it's good news or bad news or personal, personal situations or not, it's a crutch. It's a crutch. It's not being used to benefit the person or change their life. You don't make any friends by doing that, by being brutally honest. You don't make any friends by describing people. So JP and I have been describing people for years and we've got in trouble for it. It's been misunderstood. It's been, the honest, even very heartfelt and descriptions of situations or people that we've come forward with that was done out of love and even out of respect for those people have been twisted so that we've been maligned by everybody, friends, family, everybody. So, we're at this point now where we're just looking at each other going, well, fuck it. If you're going to malign me and if you're going to put a big giant X over my body and say, I don't like the fact that you supplied me with a solution for my problem. I don't like the fact that you're reminding me that the place I go to every day, put a mask on my face and cover my identity, but everybody kind of sort of has a general idea of who I am because of all this personal stuff I share in the group. If you're going to remind me that that place and that space is not a safe space, but actually a crutch meant to undermine me and take away my power, well, I don't like that either. So this kind of segues into the whole, Russell Brand situation. All right, what Russell Brand was, an actor, right? So maybe a stand-up comedian. I really don't know what his before life was before he had this, presence on social media where he became so popular. As he was transitioning into that presence on social media, though, his image makers, his handlers, his stylists, his psychologists, his analyst, his chef, his private chef, everybody around him said, "Look, you're going to get attacked. You are going to be maligned. You're the perfect setup for it. You had some drug addiction problems, apparently some sex addiction problems. It's going to happen. You're going to be the one that they are going to kill. But what about the fact that I got married and had a couple of kids and I've changed my ways and I'm better and I'm in therapy and I'm a much better person and I've turned myself around?" Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. They're still going to kill you. They're still going to go after you. All right. So does that mean he's completely innocent? No. Does that mean that I think that he's being used as sort of as a patsy? Like he came forward with all of these, incredibly insightful commentary regarding, the COVID operation and regarding all sorts of things going on in the world. He was pretty transparent about, trying to dig deep and get to the bottom of things. I never even listened to a podcast of his. Never had an interest. But I don't do that. I'm only interested in the larger 300,000 foot view from way up high on the perch, looking down and going, this is what's happening. So his image makers, his handlers, his analysts, his psychotherapists, his, whoever is managing him said it's going to happen anyway. So then he's like, well, then I can just say whatever I want, because he probably said, well, maybe I should just keep it mainstream. I'll keep my podcast mainstream. Nope, doesn't matter. They're still going to go after you. Well, then fuck it. I may as well say what I'm going to say. And so that's where JP and I are. We're just like, fuck it. If you don't understand that half the shit that you're doing right now in life is a crutch to keep you from your own from success and being successful in your own life, that's something that you need to come to terms with. And so we're happily here to be your number one enemy and remind you of that, because we're going to get maligned anyway. It doesn't matter. Same thing with Russell Brand. He's going to get attacked anyway. They're going to kill him anyway. So we'll see what happens with this story, but I know that there's a lot of nonsense and a lot of gibberish and a lot of emotion that's being put out front to pull people in to redirect their energy and their emotions onto that story rather than back into themselves. And again, this is insanity in overdrive, or what looks a lot like insanity in overdrive, where you're just doing the same thing over and over again, never getting the results you want, but expecting that you will the next time around. We've all been there. We've all done that. You're only human. Eventually, you'll figure it out. I wish I would have figured out stuff like 20 years ago. I might be in a different place than I am now, but hey, I'm figuring it out now, right? So, another thing too that I was thinking about, which is completely off the a completely different subject matter, but something I want to throw out there because I have a very limited amount of time in this audio broadcast and I want to get this out. I want you to think of the year 1917. Just picture 1917 in your mind. And then I want you to picture 1970. Picture what 1970 looks like in your mind. Do you realize between 1970 and 1917 is only 53 years? And that between 1970 and 2023 is also only 53 years? It doesn't feel like a lot has changed between 1970 and 2023, right? I mean, if you really think about it. But between 1917 and 1970, it was like we had a world war, we had a whole fucking revolution, like we had, all of this progress in industry, cars, technology. Like 53, they sure did pack a lot in 53 years, right? That's pretty interesting to me that there's not a big difference between 1970 and 2023, but there's a huge difference. There's a world of difference between 1917 and 1970, and yet it's the same amount of time. Anyway, these are the kind of things that I think of. I mean, like, this is literally like what keeps me up at night. Wow, that's fascinating. And so I poke JP when he's sound asleep. I'm like, wake up! I got to tell you this thing I thought of. So he really likes that. So the I guess the theme of this broadcast is, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome is not necessarily the definition of insanity, but maybe it's more the definition of trauma has informed your life. You're getting dopamine hits by, running into this rut and repeating this trauma over and over and over again, because you know that if you put it out there, you know that you're going to get, whatever kind of sympathy or whatever kind of commentary that you think you need. But what you don't need sympathy. What you need is solutions. What you need are facts. What you need is the truth. And if you keep going into the spaces where you're not getting the truth, but you're getting those, feckless dopamine hits that aren't really helping you, then that's where we have a problem. And so I think, obviously that's where we are in the world in general right now. In general, in the world, that's where we are. A friend here in Pittsburgh, you guys have seen her. I did a broadcast with her. We did a broadcast with her a couple of years ago. We talk about her a lot. She was telling us about how, and this is really really cute. She was telling us about how when she was ready to buy her first home on her own, and the real estate agent kept wanting to show her houses, like in different kinds of houses that really just did not represent her. And then finally, when she said to the agent, "No, this is what I'm looking for," and she found a house in this really cool neighborhood in Pittsburgh. I was like, man, I cannot imagine you anywhere else. And across the street from her house is this giant house on this big lot that has fallen into disarray, sadly, practically condemned, if not condemned, just abandoned, like many houses in Pittsburgh are. And so she's like, "I think I want that house." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, okay, whatever. This is what people do all the time." And I'm going to pause the story about her for a minute, and I'm just going to launch into what we're seeing people do all the time. People have this romantic idea of living off the grid, or they have this romantic idea of living together with people that you've never met simply because they're saying the things that you like and they're becoming really relatable. Dude, no. I mean, that's not reality. So you have to understand that if you want to live off the grid, it's every day it's work, 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 work. And if you're older and elderly and you just want to live your life the rest of your days in peace and have an easy life, then you should not be living off the grid. So don't romanticize what you think you want. Eating out of a garden is hard work. It's hard work. So when she said, I want to somehow, you know, own this home across the street that's practically condemned, this giant yard that's, overgrown with weeds and stuff. I'm sure it's full of treasures, and it is. Um, I was like, "Uh-huh, yeah, sure, whatever." But she did it. She went through the proper channels and signed, the proper paperwork and went through the proper investigations and got the lawyer and spent the money and did the thing and put in the time and put in the blood, sweat, and the tears and all of this, and now it's hers. Now it's hers. So that's what we need to do is you need to have something in your life that is very real, very tangible that you can hold on to, that is a project, a focus, a passion, um, an obsession, maybe, and turn your energy towards that. It's really important. Ours was finding that perfect space, that perfect house in that, in this kind of like coastal town that we wanted, but we wanted to be close enough to, a bigger city. And for us, that bigger city is like about an hour and a half away. It's New Orleans, which I've been to once and I'm fine with it. So I would say that, you really need to redirect energy. Many of you are doing this anyway. So many of you I'm preaching to the choir. Um, but this is for those people out there who aren't quite getting it, using social media or using those spaces as your crutch, thinking that you're accomplishing something, doing it over and over again, finding the dopamine hits because of the reactions and the comments that you might get from others. At the end of the day, after you've done that, do you sleep better at night? Probably not. You're probably still an insomniac. Do you have more money? Do you have the money to supply you with what you need to survive by doing that? No, you don't. And are you being of use? Are you being of use on the planet in some way? And mostly, people will tell you, oh, you have to be of use and give back to the planet. And I say, no, you need to give back to yourself. We're at this place where there just isn't any individual move towards improving your self-worth and your life goals. Um, so I'm not seeing it. I'm seeing it on very rare occasions, and it's very troubling to me. So using your connections as a crutch is not um, is only informing your trauma to repeat the same thing over and over and over again. And people who are moving forward and improving their lives might look at you and say, are you insane? That's the definition of insanity. But I want to be a little bit kinder and gentler about it and say, I think it's just that your trauma is being, imprinted and reinformed in you over and over again. So the last thing I want to talk about, and then I'm going to end this stream, is I want to talk about another video that I'll be making. It'll be a video blurb, a video sketchbook, maybe something that's probably only about, maybe 5 minutes long. If you haven't seen the recent one I did, just go to our YouTube channel and take a look at it. It's called uh, Socially Engineered Dimorphism is an Atrocity. I know that's a mouthful, but and then it's literally a 90-second little creative graphic I made where I just put in a quote from somebody I follow on Twitter and something that I agree with. And so I put the music and the graphic together and boom. So I'm actually really proud of it. It's been a while since I made a graphic like that. So that really got my juices flowing and now I want to do more. So the next one I'm going to be doing, and I want to talk about this, is the national emergency that was declared in October of 2017. And it's clear to me that that national emergency was a direct response to outside forces that are causing the greatest devastation to the lives of our American domestic population, and that's fentanyl. That's the fentanyl addiction problem. More people have died from fentanyl overdoses, and I don't want to say they've just died. I'm going to call it a murder campaign. I'm going to call it what it is. And I found a video from 5 years ago that a popular person did, and he nailed it. And, this person years and years later, back in 2022 or so, was kind of like canceled. He went through the whole cancel thing. He was accused of being racist. Sometimes, and this person, of course, was a white male. So sometimes they're accused of being racist and sometimes they're accused of being rapists. Switch out the C for the P and, take your pick. I often feel, and then I'll end here. I often feel that you've got these group of ne'er-do-wells, in a room drinking whiskey, gambling, and there's a hat that gets passed around, and they pull a name out of the hat and they turn it over, and that name, is a famous person. They turn it over and it says P. Oh, okay, so he's going to be the rapist. And then the next name they pull out of the hat, they see the name, they turn it over, it says C. Oh, okay, so he's going to be the racist. So they just choose randomly. That's why Russell Brand didn't, he didn't really have a choice. He's like, maybe they did. They said, okay, you can be a rapist or you can be a racist. He's like, oh, well, I don't want to be a racist. No way. Because when you call me a rapist, I'm going to need the Black community to support me. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, these are the conversations that he probably has with his managers and his handlers. So I can say whatever I want because you guys are going to kill me anyway. So there you go. So that's basically the world we live in. So the next video essay I'm going to do, it's not a video essay. It's going to be probably like a music video, and his talking points will be over it somehow. It's going to be done really creatively the way I do. It's going to be about fentanyl murders that have taken place. We're talking cartels. We're talking, you know, um, the uh, the labs that make the ingredients to put it together. Like, all of these people should be held in tribunals of some sort. I mean, this is a serious issue. And to me, the reason the national emergency was declared in October of 2017 for the opioid addiction was because it was very clear to the powers that be that it was war. It was war on the American domestic population. So there was probably some sort of situation at play where it's like, you're not paying us back the money that you owe us. So you've basically given us the green light to go after your American domestic population. So anyway, I'm going to make that. It's going to come in a few days. Still have a ton of work to do for the house, packing up, dealing with the real estate agents now, things like that. So I'm glad that you guys were able to tune in today for the few minutes, and we will speak to you again very soon. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.